I'm going to talk to you about problem solving. To me, problems are a life force. I mean, they have a bad name. People think of problems as something you shouldn't have. But in fact, you must have problems. That's what being alive is. And my favorite story is there's a book written in about 1850 in Russia, and the main character is someone called Oblomov. And it's a parody showing you how decadent the landowners were. And Oblomov does not get out of bed for the first 150 pages of the book. And the point is, he has nothing, everything in his life is taken care of, so he has no problems. Eventually, when he gets out of bed, he never leaves the room. And the point simply is that that's not the way to live. That's just being a parasitical human being. So in my world, problems are the same as opportunities. And some of the people in my life that are really enlightened, they say the bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. But at any rate, I'm not quite as enlightened that way, but it's an important thing to understand. So I want to first give you an example of successful problem solving from an example from the D.School at Stanford. And then I'm going to get to what I think is the real issue, that people don't do problem solving correctly and the things that can get in your way. So the successful problem is one which is one where you define a point of view, and the point of view is essentially the problem statement. And so what you want to do is you want a phrase describing a specific user, and a phrase describing a need, and a phrase giving an insight specifying what, but not how the solution needs to be accomplished. Now that's going to be one of the real things you can find. People often specify the solution when they're specifying the problem, and that causes a lot of issues. So, as an example, this is a true story of a class of mine, and it's a successful story. The problem statement is Maria, a poor single mother, needs financial know-how so she can use her money efficiently. So what's implied in that statement? What's implied in that statement is if this woman gets more financial know-how, she'll use her money efficiently. That's not necessarily true, right? She could know everything she wants and still be a spendthrift and not being able to save money. So you have to test the hypothesis. So in this class, it was kind of interesting. It was a problem. We had trained the students in design thinking, and then we said, form your own team and find your own problem to change something in the world. And they found these poor janitors at Stanford, these people who cleaned the floor. They're from Honduras. They spoke almost no English, but one of the students could speak Spanish. And when they talked to her, they found that this woman, Maria, was one of them, in every way she was being taken advantage of. She didn't have a bank account. So if she cashed a check, they took a big percentage out of her check just to cash it. That she was paying too much for her just an ordinary cell phone, for the video. Everything was just costing her too much. So they started to give them lessons in Spanish, and the class ended and everything was happy. And then the student, 6 months later, he met this woman, and he found out she had saved 9% of her salary in 6 months on a salary of less than $40,000 a year, which in America is hardly enough to live on. So it just changed his whole life. He realized there's really something in it that some group of poor people who are not banking, of which there are billions in the world and tens of millions in America, if they get a little financial know-how, it can change their lives in a positive way. And from that, he scaled the problem, and it took off. He got a G20 award, he got a financial services award, got mentioned by all these companies, and it's called the Juntos, which means together, and they simply work with cell phones, not smartphones, just regular ordinary cell phones, use text messaging to get people to learn more and do their banking. And it's right now, it's in 12 countries, it's on 4 continents, and next week they're going to announce some real big deals with Brazil and India. So it's just taken off, and it's my example of a real successful design thinking problem that came from the students themselves, which to me is part of design thinking, is the ability to go out and do things and find things in your world that need changing and change them in a nice way. So I feel, I feel it's a great example. Now, That's them, that's the students, that's what. How come intelligent people like my colleagues and me and my family and people like you lose sleep over problems? How come students can go out in the world and solve these great problems and people like us have problems losing sleep? Okay, I can't see you because I would ask you to raise your hands and ask you who hasn't ever lost sleep on a problem. With the lights from my eyes, so I wouldn't know how you voted. But I know everyone's going to raise their hand. Everyone in this room loses sleep on problems. And the problems I'm talking about are not peace in Syria, they're not refugee problems, they're not problems of Israel and Palestine, they're problems of what should happen in your family, how your children should behave, how you should be at work. We all have these ordinary problems and we have trouble solving them. Now, did you ever wonder why? Well, I was foolish enough to wonder why for many, many years. And I came up with, I think, a good answer to why we do that. People that are smart enough not to. And the point is you need to have rules. And I'm going to give you 3 rules for biking. You all know next Saturday there's a big bike race in France. It's actually starting in Germany, but it's in France, right? And I wouldn't raise your hands. Anyone here bike? Anyone in the Tour de France here? Okay, so if you're in the Tour de France, you know these are the rules of biking. If you're not, you may not know these are the rules of biking. The first rule is don't steer with the handlebars. The second rule is don't sit on the seat. And the third rule is don't push on the pedal. And those are the real professional rules of biking, believe it or not. And they seem counterintuitive. If you're just an ordinary biker, they seem counterintuitive. But if you think about them, they're okay rules. So how about the rules of problem solving? Well, I'm going to give you 3 rules of problem solving, which you may think are counterintuitive, but believe me, if you want to do the Tour de France of problem solving, you better know these rules. So this is a gift. Stay awake, even though you're tired after lunch. This is important. So the first rule is don't use an answer as a question. I'll explain these more later on, but don't use an answer as a question. The second rule is don't use reasons. I'll explain that later on. And again, that's not reasonable not to use reasons. Well, it's the same as reasonable as not to sit on the seat. Believe me, it's important. And the third thing is don't confuse trying and doing. And that brings us to our friend Yoda, which is the title. And we'll talk about that later on. Okay, so if you're stuck, you're treating a wrong answer as a right question. I'll explain that. But that's the basic reason you're losing sleep at night. Because you're treating a wrong answer as a right question. And what you want to do is get unstuck. So just like if you're walking along, you have some chewing gum on your heel, you got to get unstuck. And the way you get unstuck is really easy. You don't use answers as questions. Now I'll give you an example of that. Let's say you want to get married. You want to find a spouse. Okay, so that's a question. Most people do it one way or another. If they want to find a spouse, they do find a spouse. If you are having trouble with that, if you have tried all the dating programs and all the bars and everyone's fixed you up and everything, and nothing has happened, my statement to you is you are actually trying to use a solution for a question. It's not how I find a spouse. It's not going to work for you because it's not working. And it's an answer. You think it's an answer to another question. And the trick is to find out what is the answer to. And the way you find that out is you just ask yourself, what it would do for you if you solved the problem? So what would it do for me if I found a spouse? So, you could get different answers. Let's say the common answer people will give you is, you'll get companionship. So really, the situation is what you really want is companionship. And a spouse might be the wrong answer for you. Because none of you are giving your spouses, I brought my wife along so I wouldn't get into trouble. But most of you don't have your spouses here. So you're not giving your spouse companionship now, okay? And I travel a lot. There's a lot of times I don't give my spouse companionship. And I have a lot of problems with that. So really, if my wife married me for companionship, she made a bad mistake, okay? And the question is, if she really wanted companionship, there are a lot of other solutions and better solutions, and they would open up, like, for example, meet friends online, take classes, get a pet, join a club, go to jail, join the army. There's a million solutions. So what I've just done is I've opened up the solution space by going from the original problem where I was stuck. In other words, I couldn't find a spouse. I worked, nothing worked. I couldn't find a spouse. What I asked myself, what it would do for me if I solved the problem? And you see, what I had done is I had taken a spouse as a solution to the problem, how do I get companionship? I had in my mind subconsciously said, I really want companionship, I'll get a spouse. So that was a solution. That was not the question. I have to go back to the real question, how do I get companionship? The solution space opens up tremendously, and if I get a spouse, that's one of them, it probably won't work. It's not going to work for you. And if you get companionship, you won't need spouses and stuff like that. So the point is, that's a very simple model, and it works very nicely. I have one example from a workshop I did. It's so good I could not resist it. So a little bit of a repeat, but I want to show this to you. This one was how does this woman wanted, her problem in life is she wanted her boyfriend to stop snoring. How am I going to get my boyfriend to stop? We've done everything. We've gone to doctors. We've done everything we possibly can. How am I going to get my boyfriend to stop snoring? So I said to her, well, if you've tried everything, it's the wrong question. You've actually picked a solution. What would it do for if your boyfriend stopped snoring? Well, she said, well, I'd get a good night's sleep. So really what her problem is, how do I get a good night's sleep? Well, getting a good night's sleep has a lot of answers, including the boyfriend stop snoring. So the solution space opens up to use earplugs, get a different room, get a different boyfriend, get pills, so forth and so on. So you see the solution space opens up tremendously, and she's now no longer worried about this poor guy snoring or not, if she really wants a good night's sleep. So that's the model, okay? And these are kind of trivial things, although these are very important in life. I find people have these problems all the time, and they're really important. So I don't want to trivialize these, but I want to apply these more to the kinds of problems we talk about more professionally. But the first thing I want you to understand, I hate to do this with Stanford students, not graduate students, they're okay, but freshman students. They don't understand the difference between disappearing a problem and solving a problem. See, when my method disappears the problem, getting married is no longer a problem. You don't care if you get married or not. Getting the boyfriend to stop snoring is no longer a problem. You don't care if you get him to stop snoring or not. So the problem's disappeared, right? So they say, but you didn't solve the problem. I didn't solve it, I disappeared it. That is much better than solving a problem. If you solve a problem, it can come back to you. It can come back, it can come back. If it's not an issue in your life, it's gone forever. So I want you to understand that a real positive bonus of this method is it can disappear problems forever. That things you're losing sleep over can just be out of your life forever. So I want to take a problem that came up in the D.School. This had to do with premature children, and it came from Nepal, where there were an NGO of doctors have a problem with premature children in Nepal. They have these things called incubators. I'm sure you have them in the hospitals in Paris. We have them at Stanford. They cost about $20,000. And they get them in Nepal, they get them donated. So $20,000 isn't a big problem. They get them donated from India. But the thing is, they break and they can't fix it. So it's complicated. And the other bigger thing is you need electricity or else the baby dies because the baby has to stay warm. So you need to have a constant source of electricity. And if you've ever been to Nepal, the electricity is not very constant in Nepal. So we got that problem. And the students solved the problem of keeping the incubator repaired and making it always warm. How'd they solve it? They redesigned it to have less parts so it wouldn't break, then it'd be easy to repair. And how'd they take care of the electricity? They thought of battery backups. Very fun. So they solved the problem. Then they went to Nepal and they saw they solved the wrong problem. Because what they saw when they got to Nepal, that it wasn't the doctors they should be designing for, but they should be designing for the mothers and the children. And the problem was, how do you keep a baby from dying? And when they were there, they saw that these incubators are not anywhere where the mothers are. The incubators are in the villages, in the clinics. Many of the mothers are up in the hills. They cannot get there in time. They won't leave the other children alone, so they'll let this baby die. And even if they try and come, it's just so painful to get there. So they realize they solved the wrong problem. So that's the whole idea. When you have an answer that's the wrong answer, and you solve it, you're still not doing anything. So what they had to do is reframe the problem. And they reframed the problem. What would it do for us if the incubators work? What it would do for us, it would make the babies stay alive, right? So the problem is, how do you save the children? Not how do you save the incubators? And by working on that problem, they came up with something like this. This looks like a sleeping bag, but it's a little bit more complicated. It has in it a bladder with wax. And if you heat the wax, it changes phase, it melts, and it keeps the right heat for the body for 4.5, 5 hours. And you can do the melting with or without electricity. You don't need electricity. You can boil water, any fire, the sunlight can do it. So you're no longer stuck with the electricity, which is the main thing. And it's much cheaper than the other thing and so forth. And over 400,000 babies have now been saved because of that, because they found the right problem. And it's gotten a lot of publicity. This guy, who used to be a great president, now retired, to invite them to the White House. So I'll give you another one from a company. It's the same idea, but a little bit more advanced. So this is someone we know who does exec ed at the D.School, but he works at General Electric in Schenectady, New York. His name is Doug Dietz, and he designs MRI machines. He's the head of a team of designers who design MRI machines. And his specialty is for children. And there's an example of a child in the machine and things like that. And Doug, he never talked to a child. He never went to the clinic. He just designed the machine. And after it was out for about 6 months, he thought, well, I should go down to a local clinic and see how they like the machine. So he went down there, and the nurse said, oh, you designed the machine. We love it. You're a great designer. And he felt 10 feet tall. Just then, a young child, about a 5-year-old child, is being brought in screaming and kicking and yelling, and the nurse says, you have to leave now, we have to sedate the child. At that point, Doug finds out that 85% of the children have to be sedated before they could go into his machine. And he felt like a failure. When I hear him tell his story, he cries. I almost cry every time. But it just hurt him so much, because what he didn't realize is how a child sees that. A child sees that machine as crawling into the mouth of a metal monster. And even adults, I don't know, I don't want to mention any names, but I know some adults that have to have some Librium or something before they go into these machines. Because they are tough machines, they make noises. I don't know if you've ever been in them. Woody Allen has a good story in a movie about it. But basically, they're hard machines for even adults. And for child, they're unbelievably difficult. So what he did is he redesigned not the machine at all. He got together a bunch of children. He got the users together. He got together a bunch of children who are chronic patients. He got together child psychologists. He got together children's museum people. And what they certainly did is they didn't touch the machine, they just changed the experience. They reframed the experience from a medical procedure to an adventure. And the day before the child came, they sent him a joke book looking through your body, seeing your bones, and a knapsack. And it was like going to camp. And one of these is a pirate ship up there, so you have to hold still so the pirates don't see you. And the different stories that go with it. And it was so successful that the rate of sedation dropped to about 1%, and children were heard saying, "Mommy, can we come back tomorrow?" So that's a whole example of having the right question. Now in this case, they didn't have to throw out the machine and all that, but they solved the wrong question. And when you see the right question, in my view, what his journey would be, in my diagram, would be, make the machine work, nothing works. Then I'd say, help save the children. And I crossed that, I said, no, delight the children. He went one step further. He not only wanted to save the children, he wanted to delight them. He went to a magical place in his design. So that's the thing. So that's what I mean. Rule 1 again is, don't use an answer as your question. And if you're stuck, it's because you're doing that, even though you don't realize it. And the way to get unstuck is say, what would it do for me if I solved that question? Get another question, forget about the original, and work on that new solution space. It's magic. It works, believe me, it works. Thousands and thousands of people have used it. It works very easy. You just have to be big enough to let go of the original question. You have to be willing to just disappear the original question. All right, second one, don't use reasons. Now that doesn't seem like a reasonable thing to say, right? How could you not use reasons? If you don't use reasons, you're not a reasonable person. Well, there's no one reason for any human behavior. If you think about that, if I asked you why you're here, why did you come here? If you ask me why I came here, you give me a reason. I'll say Veronica invited me. But that's not the reason I'm here. There are many reasons. Life is so complicated. My relationship with Veronica is complicated. My relationship with Paris is complicated. My relationship with a lot of the world is complicated. And that influences everything I do. So when you pick one reason, it's a bias. You're just making yourself look good, or you're just being simple about it. And it can be harmful. You'd say, who cares? But the reason it matters a lot is because often reasons are simply excuses. And if you use the excuse, you're never going to change your behavior. If you use the excuse, you are never going to change your behavior. The minute you stop lying to yourself that you know the reason for why you did something, then you can tell yourself the truth and change what you're doing. So that's an important thing. So in my book, I have a chapter which is simply stated reasons are bullshit. It's as simple as that. That's the title. That's the only way to think about them. Some people are offended at it. My wife is offended by it. But the best one was I had a secretary, not my secretary, but someone's in the mailroom with a secretary, and this package came in with labels saying reasons are bullshit. And she goes, oh, what a terrible word. And I said, yes, reasons. Okay. And literally, I believe that. Reasons are a much worse word than bullshit, believe me. Bullshit is fine, reasons aren't. And silence is much better than bullshit. So you don't have to say what you did. You don't have to say why you did it or anything like that. I have a situation where I get emails from all over the world, mainly Iran, India, China. Every week or so I get 2 or 3 emails from someone who wants to come to Stanford and do a PhD with me. And often they researched it, so they know about me and stuff like that. But I'm not going to take them. So I used to say, I'm sorry I can't take you because I'm going on sabbatical, or I'm sorry I don't have any money. And all the time we get a message back. If I'm going on sabbatical, they'll come a year later. If they don't have any money, they have a rich uncle. And whatever I told them, they had a pushback on it. And since I've gotten my enlightenment about reasons, you know what I say? I say, sorry I can't help you. Good luck. And you know what happens? About 90% of the time I get back one email, thank you for answering my email, Professor. See, I don't give the reasons. I just say what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. That's all it takes in the world. Once you put the reasons, there's a lie in it. Because if I really wanted to take that person, even if I didn't have money, I'd get money. And if I was going, I'd take them. So anytime you give an excuse, you want to make them feel better, you're actually making them feel worse. So the one thing I want to tell you, though, is don't give reasons unless you really have to. That's the really good behavior to have. And the other thing, I lost the most important slide. You cannot take this at home. I'm not responsible for your marriage, your job. I'm not responsible for any part of your life if you try this at home. I have never once told my wife her reasons are bullshit. I have never once told my son the reasons are bullshit. I have never once told the people I work with. If people take my workshop, I tell them. But I never tell them if it's not my job to tell them. If I'm just an ordinary person, it's my job to fix myself in the world. It's not my job to fix everyone else up. And I had this experience, you know, I was on, where I learned this. I used to be late all the time, as an example. And when I learned this, I was on a board of directors for a company up in Berkeley. And I'd come late to the meeting. It's about, from Stanford to Berkeley, it's about an hour or so, an hour and 15 minutes, if there's no traffic. And I'd come to the meeting always late. And I'd come into the meeting, I'd say, I'm really sorry I'm late because of the traffic. And it's true, there was traffic. But of course, it had nothing to do with the traffic because I left just in time, as if there'd be no traffic, I'd make it. But a miracle, there was traffic. So I can't kind of never tell them the whole story. I just tell them the part that makes me look good, that it's not it's my control. I don't tell them I did 3 emails before I left. I made 5 phone calls before I went. I met someone in the hall. I don't tell them the whole history of the story. I just start where it is. Once I realized that, I said I should either quit the board because I'm disrespecting them, or I should get there on time. And at that moment, I decided to get there on time. And from then on, I've never been late. And it's very simple. Now I'm the trouble in people's lives because I'm always late. I have a hostess, a friend of mine, went to her house for dinner, and she said, Bernie, God damn you, since you wrote your book, everyone comes on time. No hostess wants people to come to a dinner party on time. Okay, but the point simply is, it's a really good way. As long as I told myself I had the excuse of traffic, I would never change my behavior. And if you're ever going to change your behavior, you have to not lie to yourself. And that's a really important thing in solving problems for other people. So as I say, don't give reasons. Just say what you do and say what you don't do. Okay. Now the title is Yoda was wrong. And the point simply is that there is a try. I don't know if you know the story in the movie, he told you, but there's a part in the Star Wars movie where Yoda says, there's no try. One of the characters says, I'm going to try and do this. And Yoda says, there's no try, there's just do. And that's a really interesting thing in the movie, and it makes sense. I don't blame them for putting it in the movie. The problem is it's gone viral, and it's on toys, everyone believes it. But in fact, it's not true at all. There is a try, and there's nothing wrong with try. What's wrong is if you confuse the two. See, trying is not the same as doing. It's as simple as that. And if you try and do something, it might happen or it might not happen. But if you're doing something, it's going to happen, no matter what the obstacles are, no matter what you're doing. I had a fellow I met when I came to Stanford first. He was a swimmer, and he wanted to go to the Olympics, and he had an accident in the shower, a very bad accident in the shower, and he had to have a surgery. And the surgeon told him he's never going to swim competitively again. But somehow this guy wanted to swim, and the Olympics was coming. He was headed for the Olympics before. So he hired someone, and they took him to a big reservoir. Near Stanford, there's a big reservoir called Lexington Reservoir. And they trained him, after surgery, and after what the doctor told him. And then he tried for trials, and it was between him and one other person, the last position, and he got it just miraculously. And he went to the Olympics, and not only did he win a gold medal, he set the world's record. And he came back and he put the medal on the doctor's desk. And he's a serial entrepreneur. He's done many things. And he told me, Bernie, you know, and I bring him down to talk to students because he's inspirational. He said, Bernie, you know, every time I get stuck on something, it's just like my swimming thing. I get this block, and it's just not going to work. It's not going to work. And I could give up and go on. But if I don't, somehow I get around that obstacle. And it's magic. That's where the magic comes. But I would have never gotten to the magic if I hadn't had the obstacle. So in a way, my shower was a gift. I didn't look at it that way. But all these obstacles I've had to get across, they were gifts to me in the long run. And that's the idea you have to understand. I'm going to risk my marriage and tell you this story because my wife doesn't like it. But to me, it's the perfect story. We were in San Francisco coming back from visiting our son, and we passed a movie house that shows very unusual movies. And they had a huge line in front of the movie house. And I said, oh, let's go to the movie. It's about a band, and the band is there, all these people, it's got to be great. I never heard of the band. She said, no, I'm tired, I want to go home, I want to go to bed. I said, come on, let's go. She said, all right, I'll go. So I said, jump out of the car, buy the tickets, I'll go find a parking space. So she jumped out. 10 minutes later, I came back, and she's not online. She's standing in front of the box office. And I said, well, why are you not online? She said, they're sold out. I said, well, you didn't get anything? She said, no, they're sold out. And I said, wait here, and I went, and I got 2 tickets. And the interesting thing about that is it's a perfect example. She was trying. She was being nice to me. And as soon as there was an obstacle, there were no tickets, she gave up. That's what you call trying. She might have gotten tickets, she would have gone. But if she couldn't, there's the obstacle, that's the end of it. I was going to go no matter what. No matter how much money I had to use, I was going to go to this thing. I was doing whatever it took. And you have to understand that. I've had things where I've come to the airport and so I'm supposed to go to a meeting in Dallas, and I don't really want to go, and it's snowing. Dallas Fort Worth Airport is closed, and it's snowing. So I call up, I say, I'm sorry, I can't come. They say, don't worry about it. But the truth is, if my life depended upon it, the fact that the Dallas airport was closed would not stop me from getting to Dallas in a snowstorm from California. You know, there's lots of ways of doing it. So you have to understand, these are examples, and I'm sure you have them in your own life. And it's okay to try, it's okay to do. It's just not okay to confuse them. So don't think you're doing when you're only trying. And if you're trying, it's fine. It might or might not happen. I don't care. It was great that I didn't go to Dallas. I was trying to go to Dallas. I didn't go. I was so happy. I would have been awful doing. So doing is not any better than trying. It just don't confuse the two things and use them as an excuse when you get an obstacle that you can't do it, just like my friend when he broke his back swimming. So that's the point I want to bring with Yoda. I'm always afraid Yoda's going to strike me dead when I say this, but so far I've gotten away with it. So rule 3 is don't confuse trying and doing. Okay? That's really important. And they're both okay. The bad thing about, well, Yoga said he made one bad and the other good. I don't think they're true. I think trying can be better than doing something, but if you confuse them, that's where the problem is. So, in closing, I want to tell you there are 2 important words I haven't used. What is your intention, and are you willing to give it the attention it requires? So a lot of us have what we call pipe dreams. Pipe dreams, you know, I want to be a billionaire, I want to, whatever people think they want to be. But they don't do anything about it, okay? If you really want to do something, you have to have the intention of doing it, and you have to give it the attention it requires to do it. There's no magic creativity secret methods. I've taught a lot of creativity. The best creative method is hard work. But within that, you have to have the intention of what you want to do, and you have to give it the attention. And if you follow the 3 rules I gave you, right? First rule is don't work on an answer instead of a question. Second rule is don't use excuses to block yourself from what you're doing. And third rule is don't confuse trying and doing. You're going to be a perfect human being. And merci.